Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our monthly webinar. My name is Emma, and I'm the Sales and Marketing Administrator here at the agency. Joining me today, I have Matt Larrabee. He's our Director of Web Services, along with Liz Hanna, who is our Director of Project Management and Support. We'll be delving into how, in today's digital landscape, your website is your busiest branch, often the first point of contact for potential customers and members. And choosing the right platform is key. So to start off, could you maybe give a rundown of what a CMS is for some of the folks who might not be familiar with the term?
Absolutely. CMS stands for Content Management System. And that is the system or the application that you would use to update your website. So think of the CMS as a tool that allows you to communicate with your customers on the front end of your website. You'd use your CMS to update the site for any promotions that you're doing, educational information that you want to share with them, rates, things like that, any lead capture, depending on your websites or your CMS's functionality. That's where all of that would take place in the CMS and then get pushed up to the website for consumers to look at, to review, and hopefully to reach out to you for joining your institution.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a pretty good rundown. I know not everyone is super familiar with the terms that we use here. So thank you for that, Liz. And kind of leading into that, when it comes to understanding your website needs, where might be a good place to start?
I think when you're looking at building a new site or choosing a CMS platform, start with what you have now. Is your current CMS platform, is your current website meeting your needs? Are you able to do the things that you want to do when you consider that your website is really often the first time that people experience you and experience your bank or your credit union? Are you able to communicate what you want to do? Is it flexible? Are you able to build forms? Are you able to share the information and communicate with people in the way that you want? So that's really the first step, is looking at what is your website doing now, and then what are those things that you'd like to be able to do. With that, considering what do you have for internal resources to be able to leverage a CMS that has lots of functionality? What kinds of things can you support internally? And that's really important when you choose a CMS, is to make sure that it's going to be flexible to meet you where you are now, but also to grow with you, to grow with what those strategic initiatives might be and what you can do with your department as it is today.
I think too, along with that, one of the most important things you can do when you're either starting a new website or just wanting to understand how people use your website is identifying your customers, identifying how they use the site. That's going to be very different if they're Gen Z or baby boomers or different generations. They're going to use your site a lot differently. You might want to do customer journeys just to see that path of how people use your website, see what content they're looking for on your website, see what tools they're looking for on your website, if they're using calculators, if they're using forms, if they're using account choosers, things like that. Because really, the website needs to serve your customers. It's easy to get into the mindset that we just need to get this information on our website and that's what needs to be there. But it really should be more of a tool for that, and it's really should serve your specific customers and not just one set of your customers, but really the whole gamut.
Absolutely. Well, those are really good points, Matt. Could you maybe dive into the different types of CMSs that are available, and maybe what are some examples of platforms that are out there right now?
Sure. There's thousands of CMSs out there. You can really find one for every kind of work you're doing. I've personally built sites on probably 20-ish different CMSs in my career. We built our own CMS at Panos years ago that we used for almost 10 years. There's really a few, I would say, categories you could break CMSs down into. The first is open source. So you see a lot of open source CMSs, content management systems. And what open source means is that code is shared between anybody who wants to use it. So any developer, any programmer can go in and make updates to that code. So the whole code base is out there and available for everyone. Normally, open source CMSs are free. They don't have a license. A lot of times plugins that you add on to those might have a cost. And some examples of open source ones, WordPress, the most famous one, probably heard of Drupal, Joomla, Umbraco. Those are common open source ones that we see out in the market. The second group is proprietary, and that is more of a closed system, more structured CMS, which you'll see, I'm sure you've heard of, like Sitecore or Kentago or Sitefinity or Adobe or HubSpot. Those are all proprietary ones. They're not free, they're not open source. You can't look at all the code for those, but they usually come with a license fee or a cost to do that. The third type I would call headless. Some of these other proprietary ones and other open source ones are headless as well, but really the difference between a headless CMS is how you use the data that you enter into your CMS. So typical headless CMS, you might use the rates or the content that you enter into the CMS on your website, but you might also use them on your mobile app or your kiosks in your branches or your social media or different channels. So typically a headless CMS is used to push data between different channels and not just your website. And then the fourth one out there is kind of what we call the self-service CMSs. That's things like Wix and Squarespace, where it's really drag and drop. You don't need a developer at all really to do it. You can build pages and drag stuff into place and kind of design it like you would in Photoshop or something like that. So those are the four categories. The pros and cons of each. Really, I would say open source, the cost is probably the biggest pro. Usually open source CMSs are free and very flexible. That's kind of what open source is known for. The cons with the open source, they're usually so robust and flexible that they can be prone to errors, prone to security vulnerabilities, prone to bloat, and just having a website that has 1,000 plugins that really slows your site down and really is hard to manage. Proprietary is kind of the opposite. It has a fee usually or a license subscription. Those are usually a lot more structured, a lot more security conscious in that they do structure stuff. It's not as flexible, but it really keeps it so it's locked down. A lot of proprietary CMSs have a specialty. So you'll see some that have a lot of marketing capabilities with them. You'll see some that are geared more toward e-commerce and are really good at that, or digital platforms. And then headless, we talked about a little bit. The biggest pro of that is you can push your data to different channels. So if you're looking to have multiple sites or an app and different things that you want to push content to, a headless one is perfect for that. And then the self-service, it's really good if you want to set up a quick website, maintain it on your own. They're very hard to scale. So if you have more than a dozen pages or so, that gets really difficult to maintain and manage, and doing anything custom on those is usually very difficult, if even possible at all, and very cost prohibitive a lot of times. So that was a lot of talking, but that's kind of the categories of CMSs out there, and just a little bit of the pros and cons of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's super insightful, Matt. I know you mentioned it's a lot of information, but super important for any financial institution to consider. And in that same vein, we actually have a question from Anonymous here, so we can go ahead and answer this. So it says that, I think I saw a stat from panel somewhere that the digital branch gets 5 to 10 times more traffic than a physical branch. Is that right?
Yes, I would say that's an understatement. That's pretty conservative numbers. Definitely if you're going by just analytics alone, page visits, things like that, or unique visits, you're going to have way more than that people that go to your website than you would a branch. So that is definitely the first place most everybody will look at your brand, at your bank, especially the younger demographics. I mean, understandably, there's a little bit of a difference between somebody who walks into a branch than somebody who goes to your website. It's less of a commitment to go to your website than it is your branch. But that is why we see a lot of the younger generations visit a website first. They want to get to know you. They want to see what they can do on your website first before they would ever walk into a branch. So those stats are true, if not understatements, of how many people go to your website.
And I think it's important, you talked about, who's using your website, those sorts of things. I mean, when you think about even how you like to shop, how do you like to do things? Do you like to order things online? Do you like to go to the store? Wouldn't you prefer to try to fill out an application online at home, at your convenience, than go into the bank? And we know that the younger demographic isn't the only group that likes to do things online. But even when you consider the younger demographic, right, they prefer to do things by texting, by doing everything online. They've grown up in that way. So it's natural that they are going to be looking at your website first before they even step foot into a branch. So as Matt said, that's a very understated number, but it is very true that your website is visited more often than a branch would be.
Absolutely. So moving on, I know we touched upon this a little bit, but what are some features for financial institutions to look for in a CMS when they might be exploring options?
There's definitely some that most of our FIs are kind of a top priority for them. It really depends on what you're looking to do on your website, but some that really all FIs share is the ease of use and content editing capabilities. You want something that you're comfortable using, that you don't build a website and it's so hard to use that you never add content, you never keep it up to date because it's just a pain to go in there. So you want something that's easy to update. A lot of times our FIs prefer something visual where they can go in and really build, and it's a visual experience where they can really build out pages easily and content. Some other things, SEO friendliness. So SEO and ADA are very important for FIs. So you want to have a CMS that really supports that and really encourages good SEO and ADA. Scalability is important. We talked about Wix and some of those others being very hard to scale. Bank websites can get pretty large. You're always having to add different pages if they're new accounts or products or education material or blog articles or legal pages. You want something that's going to be able to adapt to all those. And say you have a new product that needs a specific new layout or something like that. You want a CMS that doesn't really limit that growth that you have. Then I would say security features are probably what we hear first, the first question on really any CMS that we're talking about. Security is definitely a hot topic when it comes to especially some of the open source ones like WordPress, Drupal, something like that. Really, those can all be very secure. That's really dependent on who's building the site. So an open source, one of the cons, I would say, of it is that anybody can build on an open source platform. So a lot of non-developers, a lot of beginners or kind of DIY people will build on WordPress and their sites will be not secure because they don't know the best practices. So security, if that's top of your mind, find someone who really knows what they're doing to build an open source site, or use a proprietary CMS that's really geared more toward that doesn't let you do, or that really enforces more best security. Then a couple other things real quick. I would say your workflow, make sure that the CMS supports your workflow of how you publish content and how you need to approve updates and things like that. And then what marketing features you want to take advantage of. So things like A/B tests or marketing automation or personalization. If you are looking into that and want to support that, make sure that your CMS will support that as well.
So kind of in closing, maybe could we cover overall what might some key factors to consider when choosing a CMS for your digital branch be?
Yeah, sure. So, some of that goes back to what we talked about earlier. Really, what is it that you're looking to accomplish? The flexibility that you will need to accomplish that, being able to update your site on a regular basis. Also having resources, when you choose a vendor to help you build that site, what sorts of resources will you have with that vendor in terms of support, technical expertise, things like that that you'll want to consider when you choose a CMS. Who are you working with and how will they support that site for you? Making sure that the CMS that you choose can integrate with any of the third parties that you have on your website. Most can, but you always want to double check and make sure that that's a component of the CMS that you're looking at. And then one of the things too that you would want to consider, Matt touched on this a little bit, is depending on the CMS that you choose, do you have any budget constraints? Some of the CMSs that Matt mentioned do have an annual license fee. Is that something that you can work into your budget? Is that something that's palatable to you? Or are you looking at something that maybe has a lower cost to entry fee? Things like that are going to be important for you when you're looking at a CMS.
Yeah, I mean, I would add to that too and say, when we talk to people about CMSs, there's a lot of people that the conversation starts with, oh, I hate the CMS I'm using. I can't update anything. There's problems all the time.
Yeah.
So really, you do want to be careful, very careful about the CMS you choose. You want to make sure that it's, like I said, there's thousands out there. You want to make sure that's an established one that has a community of support, a big staff behind it. Really is not something new. It has a history of being secure and things like that, as well as the developer who develops on that CMS has to have experience and knowledge of those best practices and things like that. And then really just with your CMS, your website should be a sales tool. It really should be your best sales tool that you have in your pocket. So with the CMS, that can really limit that. If you want to track return on investment of the things you're doing on the web, you want a CMS that can do that. You want a CMS that can have functionality that can appeal to all your demographics and allow them to use your website in the way they most feel comfortable. You want it to be lead capture based and sales based. So you want to push everything in the funnel on your website. You want to push everybody to action that goes to your website. It shouldn't just be informational. It really needs to be transactional. I would say those are some additional things to consider with your CMS.
Absolutely. Well, I think we had a great conversation today. We did cover a lot. I think we'll kind of close it out there. Wanted to thank everybody so much. And our panelists today, Matt and Liz. If anybody has any other additional questions or interested in learning more about the information discussed today, please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us directly via email. And that is going to be, for me personally, econlin@panosmarketing.com. That's ECONLIN @panosmarketing.com. And we hope to see you guys next month.